Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello, welcome to the Week in Retrospect. I'm Mark Morse, and this is the weekly video I do where I review my week, what I've listened to, what I've watched, just things I've done. This week I have lots of exciting things to talk about, including some good news I've gotten from my daughter Luxy that we'll talk about later. I always like to start out talking about vinyl, my vinyl records for the vinyl community that I'm so enamored with. And this week there's been some big news on the Beatles front. And if you go to the Beatles store, I'll provide a link below. They are offering the Beatles 1964 US albums in mono. It spotlights 7 albums released in America between January 1964 and March 1965. These are the Capitol records that were made in America. They have that Dave Dexter touch to them. A lot of them have some reverb on it that you don't hear in the UK presses. These are the albums that us in North America grew up on. So they're kind of interesting. They've been out of print since 1995. The 7 mono albums are available now for pre-order in a new 8 LP box set titled The Beatles 1964 US Albums in Mono. You can buy these records individually if you like. They're all for pre-order. I think November 22nd is the release date. Or you can buy them in the box set. If you buy them in the box set, you also get the 2 LP release, The Beatles Story. Now this isn't a musical album. This is more interviews. Beatle fans love this kind of stuff, but it is not essential. I don't think I'll buy the box set, to be honest. I think I'll probably be buying the individual records and just a few of those. These include in mono, Meet the Beatles' second album, A Hard Day's Night, the original motion picture soundtrack by United Artists, Something New, The Beatles Story, Beatles 65, and the early Beatles. So you can buy the box set for about $300. That excludes the shipping, or you can buy them for about $30 individually. So I'm considering buying a couple of these. I haven't decided which ones I'm going to get. There's one I know I'm going to get for sure. When I was looking through my Capitol records, I realized that the Meet the Beatles I have is the Japanese flag series, and I want the Capitol record version. So I'll get that one for sure. These are some other considerations. Beatles 65. The early Beatles. And the Beatles' second album. So this is also a very high contender. I'll let you know as time goes on. But that's the big Beatle news in vinyl. In each of my Week in Retrospect videos, I like to do at least a couple shout-outs to other vinyl channels that I've been enjoying lately. The first one is Brian at Embryonic Robot. He actually gave me an idea for a book I'm going to review in this video, the Jim Thompson, The Killer Inside Me. He also has just a very interesting taste in music. He is doing the wildly unpopular John Cale series, but a very interesting series to me because I'm very interested in John Cale. The other one is Mark, incredible name that dude, at Mad for Vinyl. I've been checking out his videos lately. One of the more recent ones that I've enjoyed is his 5 top Springsteen albums. You know I love Springsteen. And so I'm going to link to both of these guys down below. Please go visit them. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing. These guys are great vinyl guys, and I think you'll enjoy them. As I mentioned before, Brian at Embryonic Robot held up the book The Killer Inside Me by Jim Thompson, and it gave me the idea to talk about this book for this video. Jim Thompson is one of my pulp heroes. He's kind of brought artistry to the pulp genre. These are books that became popular in the 1950s. Just very interesting look at human nature, especially the depraved part of human nature. I find them just very interesting reads. I've not read a book by him that I was not entertained by. Let me read a few sections that I picked up on Wikipedia. In the introduction to the anthology Crime Novels American Noir of the 1950s, it is described as one of the most blistering and uncompromising crime novels ever written. We're talking about The Killer Inside Me. Lou Ford appears to be an unremarkable deputy sheriff in a small Texas town. Beneath this facade, however, he is a cunning, depraved sociopath with sadistic sexual tastes. His main outlet for his dark urges is the relatively benign habit of deliberately needling people with cliches and platitudes despite their obvious boredom. If there's anything worse than a bore, says Lou, it's a corny bore. This book is so, not only is it gripping with its violence, but it has a really funny, dark humor to it. Apparently, Jim Thompson, who's led an interesting life himself, not far from his characters in his books, but based Lou Ford on his father, who was a deputy sheriff at one time. There's a couple movies made. I've never seen any of the film adaptations, but to go along with the vinyl theme of this channel, the novel is referenced in the Dead Milkman song Sri Lanka Sex Hotel on their 1988 LP Beelzebub. The song The Killer Inside Me by experimental hip-hop artist MC 900 Foot Jesus is based on the novel. I used to have that album on tape, but I don't have it anymore. Then filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, who worked with Thompson on the script for the 1956 movie The Killing, praised the novel, stating that it was probably the most chilling and believable first-person story of a criminally warped mind I have ever encountered. And if anybody knows anything about warped minds, it is Stanley Kubrick. Bruce Springsteen has stated that the idea for his 1995 song My Best Was Never Good Enough on the album The Ghost of Tom Joad came from this book, specifically Ford's penchant for speaking in cliches. So if you listen to that song, you'll get the reference immediately if you've read the book. Now we come to the part of the week in retrospect that is actually my favorite part, where I go through my week about what I did, watched, who I met, all that exciting stuff, and I always start with Sunday. Sunday, of course, was a quiet day for me. A day of prayer and retrospect. I'm just kidding. Sunday, I had breakfast with my niece Lily. I call her my niece, and I've mentioned this every video. She's more of a friend, but I've known her since she was a child. Anyway, we had some breakfast together, and let's take a look at what that breakfast consisted of. Last week, when I was watching the movie Carol with Lily, I found out that she's a big Billie Holiday fan. So on Monday, package came in that I got for Lily, and I presented her with this fine Billie Holiday CD.
I just put lotion on it, so I don't have it.
I think you're gonna like it.
The Billie Holiday album. I do. With
One of the 3 essential albums. Speaking of gifts, my daughter Luxy found out that she will be coming back for her 22nd birthday, the first part of October. So I'm very excited about that. I've never missed a birthday for Luxy, and I was afraid now that she's moved out to Los Angeles that I wouldn't see her. But I got news on Monday that she will be back for her birthday, and I'll be able to see her. Here's a photo of Luxy, just in case you've forgotten. On Tuesday, another vinyl record arrived, and I bought this because I was watching a live stream from Garage Geek, and his guest was Don Rex. And Don was showing some albums, and one of the records he showed was John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Heart Play, Unfinished Dialogue.
Hanging shots along the shore and down to the little house on the beach. You just got the radio, you just hear shh, they start talking. We'd done 22 songs, basic tracks. So then it was like having a lot of movie film though, like the way they film 2 movies.
I had not ever heard this album before, and when he mentioned it, I'm like, you know what? I need that album in my collection because I'm a big John Lennon fan, and I kind of like spoken word albums. This is for just really hardcore fans. I can't imagine myself listening to this very many times. There wasn't anything real significant that Beatles fans or John Lennon fans haven't heard before. Of course, this was being recorded the year that John was assassinated. That makes this kind of poignant. Wednesday, of course, was the tragic anniversary of 9/11. I'm not going to talk about what I did that day. It was not a particularly exciting day, but I did want to give my memory of when the tragedy occurred. At the time, I was working in Des Moines, Iowa. I was working in a building called the Hub Tower. But I had been working as a programmer a couple years in the Hub building in Des Moines. And I just remember going into work that day, my boss's cubicle was right next to mine. So I often overheard his conversations. And I heard him on the phone, I think with his mother. His mother had called and said, you know, a plane has flown into the Twin Towers. And I heard him talking with her about it. And in my mind, I'm like, I imagined it to be a small Cessna plane or something like that. And then I worked on the 6th floor, but I had business on the 10th floor. I went up to talk to a business associate on the 10th floor, and I sat down. A second plane had hit the tower by that point, and she had it up on her computer screen. And of course, by then everybody knew this wasn't an intentional act. And it was a very just surreal moment. And I was supposed to be getting this vital information from her for a project I was working on, but neither one of us really were in the mood to talk about that kind of stuff, and we were just fascinated by what was going on. I came back down to the 6th floor. And my supervisor, who he'd been a military man for several years, and he was talking about his theories and stuff. He had all of us gathered around. It was just a strange time, and he was talking about, the Pentagon was the symbol of military power. The Twin Towers were the symbol of financial power. And then the third target that was unsuccessful was the Capitol, and that was political power. That was what his theory was, and it still sounds good to me. I went down with a friend, my friend Joe, and we went down to the lobby, and there was a store down there that had turned their large screen TVs out towards the windows so people coming by could watch what was going on, and they had these huge screen TVs, and it was I just remember watching those images and I actually started having a bit of an anxiety attack. It was very unnerving to watch this stuff, stuff you never thought would happen in the United States. And it was just a really overwhelming feeling, as you can imagine. The other thing I remember about that day is I had a huge project due the next day, and we'd already used up all the extensions, and so I had to get it done. And so most people went home that day. People were allowed to go home, especially because in Des Moines there's an international airport. We were in a building, and we were also next to the tallest building in Iowa, the Ruan building. And so people were allowed to go home, and I was alone. It felt like in the whole building, like I was the only person left there to work on this project because it had to get finished up. And it was just such a lonely, strange feeling. And then some guy came onto my floor and said something crazy like, "Gas is now $17 a gallon. I hope you got your gas tank filled," or something like that. I'm like, dear God, what's going on? Of course, that wasn't true, though a lot of companies did decide to gouge consumers at that time. But it was such a strange thing, and it really did. It sounds dramatic, but it did change my life. I started thinking differently. My then fiance lived in another town, and I would go visit her 2 or 3 times a week. After that, I decided programming wasn't for me. I wanted to be in the same town as my fiance. I moved back and got a job in youth care, which is a lot different than programming. Pays a lot less, I'll say, too, but it was something that meant more to me. I wanted to do something good, and that's what I did. That's my 9/11 story. I know everybody who lived through it has one, but I thought this would be a good time to relate mine. Thursday was one of those tough days at work. We all have them. I was so glad to get off work, but I was hyped up. And so Lily invited me over. One of the things I like to do to decompress is watch Lily play video games, and we chat while she's playing the games, and somehow just that simple act, it de-escalates me, and that's what I did. Friday was a fun day for me. The stresses from the day before at work had melted away. It was a fairly calm day at work after a rough week. I received in the mail another vinyl record, David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World. I'll probably talk about that next week because I haven't listened to it enough times to tell you about it. I've had the album forever, but I got a new pressing. Anyway, the other exciting thing about Friday is that's the day that Lily and I get together and we watch a movie together. And so this week we watched the movie The Thing from 1982. So The Thing is a movie that Lily and I have both watched before, and we both already love the movie, so it was just fun to watch the movie with her. Let me tell you what Wikipedia says about it. The Thing is a 1982 American science fiction horror film directed by John Carpenter, based on the 1938 John W. Campbell Jr. novella, Who Goes There? Great book. It tells the story of a group of American researchers in Antarctica who encounter an extraterrestrial life form that assimilates, then imitates other organisms. The group is overcome by paranoia and conflict as they learn that they can no longer trust each other and that any one of them could be the thing. So I remember when this movie came out, and it just seemed horrific when I first watched it. It just seemed gruesome, and the creatures were just so horrible, and it was tough for me to watch when it first came out. I'll be honest, it kind of gave me the willies. I've watched it 1,000 times since then, and it no longer has that effect on me. I remember some of the scenes that used to just make me cringe now are, I'm not going to say laughable, but they're not nearly as terrifying, but the effects are still incredibly good. I just think it's a great movie. Of course, there was another film called The Thing from Another World from 1951, and that's more the genre and time period I was interested in. And I am usually disappointed by remakes. Not at all with this one. Not only do I think this is as good, it's probably better than the original, though I do love the original. I'm going to try to get Lily to watch the original with me, if not next week, soon. She seems willing to do it. But I really do enjoy this movie. I think the story is great. I think the effects are great. It is set in Antarctica. They filmed it in Juneau, Alaska, and there's just, the landscapes are so barren and these people are so isolated. It's just a great atmosphere. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of discussion points. Everybody likes to discuss the ending, but I just thoroughly enjoy this movie. And so that brings us to today, Saturday. And this Saturday closes out like Sunday started. I had breakfast with Lily this morning. We have plans to parallel play, is what she calls it. I'm going to go over and edit this video, and she's going to be working on some stuff. And we are going to discuss life philosophy and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to that after filming this. So that ends this video. And I hope to see you next week.